Everyone, I'm Erin, aka Breakfast Candy, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to our Level Up Roundtable featuring MiniToon, the developer of Piggy, and Roblox's own Game Insights game designer, Dan Spaventa. Dan, take it away.
Thanks, Erin, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to be hosting our second ever Level Up Roundtable. And joining me today is MiniToon, the creator of Piggy. So thank you very much for joining us, MiniToon. How are you doing today?
Ahoy, I'm doing great today. How about you? You know what? Actually, scratch that. I'm doing fantabulastic. How you doing?
That's great. I don't know if I could top that, but I'm doing pretty good today. Yeah, thanks. So for those living under a Roblox rock who don't know who you are, how would you introduce yourself? Who are you? What do you do?
Sure. Well, I'm MiniToon, as you could probably guess, and also I developed the game Piggy on Roblox. I like to make Roblox games and toast. I love the color pink and keeping an optimistic attitude and hopefully trying to spread it to as many people as I can.
That's great. When did you join Roblox?
So I joined November 24th, 2011, but I've played as a guest prior to that. When that was a thing. So I think like maybe 2010-ish is when I kind of started playing on Roblox. And I started off by like making free modeled games. So I would just grab assets and then put together some Frankenstein of a game and and hope that it would work. So I did that for quite a while. In my early years, I also participated in like some Roblox groups, and I tried to run some. It didn't work out very well, like clothing ones or cafes. But I also met some great friends, some that I still know today. So,
okay. So you're talking about like developing. Have you always been a developer? Were you like born a developer on the platform, or did you like start out as a player and then maybe decide to check out Studio a few years later?
So it's a little bit of both. You know, I started as a developer, if you consider grabbing free models and putting it in a game, developing. But it wasn't until like about 2014 where I actually started to push myself into learning how to script.
Yeah.
And it's some like it came naturally. Because what I wanted to do with those free models, I wanted to like do more and more specific things because I had more specific ideas for games. So I'd actually have to, unfortunately, learn it. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, that's kind of when I started, about 2014. So about like 3 years of or 3 to 4 years of just playing and messing around. And after that, I started getting serious with it. So
that's awesome. I'm assuming I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Piggy wasn't your first foray. Do you remember like what your first project was that you worked on?
My first project, I guess you could say, is just a default Roblox map with just plastered zombies all over the place that lagged and basically broke the game. So I think it's still open. I hope nobody finds it, but it's still open. And if you do, I think you can play it.
All right, you all heard here. It still exists in the metaverse. Go find it. What are some of your favorite things about game development? Like what drives you each day to continue making these experiences?
So I've always been like a huge fan of like Lego and board games, and being able to kind of make my own stories or games and tell them, be it through playing. So yeah, I guess that's kind of something that got me into development or creating stories, and childhood stories and games also captivated me. Games with like a rich story, or games like with some story but like puzzle gameplay like Zelda. And I really enjoyed making stories, scenarios, and stuff like that. I also really liked sandbox games, games where I was in full control of what I wanted to do, and I would sort of tell stories through that. So I actually made a round-based horror game once, but it really didn't have a narrative and was based on something that already existed. So I didn't really have the control or the creative freedom that I would have wanted to if I wanted to like add a story to it. So
Interesting. So I have a feeling we're going to touch on story a bit today. Just a little bit.
Just an inkling.
Speaking of story, what was Piggy's origin story? Did you ever intend for it to be what it is now, or like what was it originally supposed to be?
So originally it was just supposed to be like an AI test, like just an NPC going around chasing people and see what I could do with it. Yeah, so it wasn't anything big, but I decided, why not sponsor it and see where it goes. So I sponsored it once, and that's kind of where it blew up from there. More and more people caught on to it, and I was surprised because it was just escaping a house from a psycho pig. It wasn't anything too crazy back then. It was actually the game, like how it came to fruition was just meant to be a parody of like those Area 51 sort of games on Roblox and the horror escape genre as a whole. So that's where I got the ideas to make such a game.
Interesting. So like in a way, it kind of started out as this like AI tech demo, and then like once you discovered that you had this audience, you were like, oh, I'm gonna tell a story.
Yeah, that's kind of I was hoping to get to that later, but that's fine. Yeah, so it's that's okay. So yeah, the original gameplay goals were just to like create a working and chasing AI and be able to escape a house with it inside. But after seeing it grow, I decided to basically take that opportunity and tell a story with it. And you would see this, like if you look at the older versions of the game, there was next to no story in the first few chapters. It wasn't until like chapters 4 or 5 that I decided, oh, you know what? I'm going to add a story to it, and I'm going to do what I want with it. So that's kind of that's how the story element got into the game.
Yeah. So like storytelling seems to be very important to you. Like what motivates you to want to tell stories and to use games as a medium for telling those stories?
Well, I guess first and foremost, playing other story games has always inspired me to make my own and to tell my own stories. So I guess something else that really motivates me is like being able to put messages and lessons in between the lines, and kind of dig around to not only discover more of the story, but to understand it and to like fully piece together this puzzle of this world around you. And the direction, like the idea, or sorry, the reason why I decided games rather than a book or a TV show or whatever is because it kind of immerses the player more than it would with a book and a movie. Not to say that those wouldn't immerse you, but you are in full control. Reading a book is like you're on a set path, unless it's like a tell your own tale kind of book. Meanwhile, games, you are at the helm of your character and their decisions. You make the decisions for yourself, and you see what will happen as a result of that, as a result of your actions. So I think that's kind of the reason why I think games make it more fun, in my opinion, and why I went that route.
So like in a way with like movies or books, you're sort of witnessing some event occurring, but like in the game, you are the person. And
exactly, you are that person.
And that sort of like makes the horror game that much more immersive, because it's not just somebody on a screen running away from, a giant pig. It's you running away from the giant pig.
Yeah. Better get moving.
Was there an inspiration for the story that you ultimately decided to tell on Piggy? Like, what are some of your narrative inspirations?
Oh, I have had so many. Like first of all, zombie apocalypse media, like shows and stuff like that, like The Walking Dead has definitely inspired me a lot. Some characters have been inspired by Robin Hood, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, and that sort of idea of perspective, has definitely inspired, or I've taken a lot of inspiration from that. I've also taken inspiration, that's good English, right? From older games of mine that never really came about. You know, like I've always wanted to make story games, but some of them never really made the cut, and I've never really been fully motivated to continue working on them. So bits and pieces from those stories I've kind of borrowed for Piggy. So yeah, I guess that's that.
Okay. So you're sitting down to write the new chapter of Piggy. What is your writing process? How are you crafting that story?
So what I like to do is I like to look at what I have so far, like characters and relationships and locations, and think of where I want to go with it. So I think of a beginning and then an end, and then I fill in the gaps. So what I like to do is I like to write the beginning and the end. And the reason why is because I have a clear direction of where I want to go. You know, I just have to get from point A to point B. And if you do it like, let's say, if you write a story and you write the beginning and then the middle and then the end, then it becomes a little challenging to sort of wrap up. And I found that I kind of experienced that firsthand with Piggy Book 1, Chapter 12. You know, that one was sort of one that I was a little like I was writing that one as I was going on, like along a little bit. So like it was a little challenging to wrap up. Whereas with book 2, what I've done is I've already thought of the beginning and the ending like right away. So everything in between is sort of a little bit of like thinking along, but also planned out. And I know exactly where I want to take it, and I know exactly where I want to go with it. So I find that writing like that helps a lot better.
I see. So like chapter 2 now, it's just about creating the journey to what you already know as the end point, versus in book 1,
Yeah,
you were trying to make sense of everything you had written so far and sort of like combined it together, and that was
well, like
kind of like a headache.
I did think of like a general ending, but it wasn't like anything too specific.
Yeah.
So like my brain just naturally works like that. Like it just wants to think of an ending, which is good. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
But some other minor things were just kind of thought of on the spot, or not necessarily on the spot, but maybe like a chapter before, you know, like not way too far in advance. So
Okay. What are some of the biggest challenges for creating stories for games, in your opinion?
So I think some of the challenges are, one, ensuring it makes sense to a new person. You know, if someone just hops into a game and plays it all the way through, or maybe just the beginning, it has to sort of make sense, in at least enough sense for them to make connections and sort of figure out what's going on for themselves. You know, if it makes too little sense, then they might not be hooked on it at all. You know, they may not understand anything, and they'll probably just give up right away. And I guess the second challenge is, or at least for me, is telling a story with a message that's meaningful, impactful, and memorable. Like something that you'll look back on and think about and reflect on, and it has like a message that you'll remember and hopefully apply in your day-to-day life, you know? So
And in terms of the gameplay itself, like how do you utilize that in order to assist in telling the story?
So what I like to do is I like to have interactions with characters, and also have this element of exploration. You know, so you'll go around the map and you'll find these puzzles or these notes that will reward the players with like knowledge about this world. So I guess a challenge with that though is making sure that the exploration, you know, like finding those notes, isn't necessarily essential to understanding the story. I find that some games like to sort of hide all their plot in like exploration, which is, you know, it's good depending on what you're going for. But for the sake of writing this chapter type game of mine, I think it's important to be able to like just look back and just look at all of the chapters at a surface level and put together what's going on, rather than missing, oh, this little plot element that's hidden in a note somewhere that someone may never find. You know, it has to make sure, you have to make sure that it's understandable by someone who's just playing it through and not necessarily looking for anything hidden or secret. So
So the stuff that like you do put in the world is really for the super fans or the highly engaged fans of like the story to be able to discover and sort of speculate with one another.
Exactly. It's not
Right.
necessarily anything essential. Like it's often foreshadowing. So, something that will be discovered later on, or a little hint at what's going to happen, but it
Right.
won't necessarily, give anything away. And it won't necessarily confuse anyone who's like, who doesn't look for that stuff, so.
Interesting. So like in a way, you're kind of like seeding viral marketing into your levels. That way, like all the YouTubers and the community fans can freak out and start to
Yeah.
speculate about future
Now that I
chapters.
think about it, I guess I am. Oops.
In terms of characters, what is your thought process for creating them for your stories, and how do you integrate them into your stories?
So characters are introduced and brought into the game to show diversity in personality and
Mhm,
kind of tell their own story, that they shouldn't necessarily be like one dimensional, but are living and breathing and they exist. And
mhm,
it's sort of like, in real life, everyone is born for a reason. And I know that sounds really deep, but that's kind of the purpose of characters in this game as well. They're
mhm,
brought in to maybe help the player, maybe antagonize them, but they all have like this message with them.
mhm,
They all tell their own story and have their own lives
mhm,
outside of what you just see as well. Like going back to like the little secrets around, like if you enter a different character's room, you're going to learn a lot about them, like who they were before this whole Piggy infection, or who they are now,
mhm,
so yeah, every character is brought into the game to show like that they're different, and they're
mhm.
not just plot tools, I guess, to get the story moving along. And so
Mhm.
I like backstory. I guess that's the big thing. I like
Right.
backstory and personality. So
Yeah. Uh, do you have the same writing approach for your characters as you do for your overall story? Like, do you figure out their ending of their specific story arc, or is it somewhat different?
so it's a little different. uh when I think of an ending, I obviously the first thing I think about personally is how characters will play into that ending.
Hmm.
And I don't necessarily think of like all the minor ones. My focus is obviously on the main characters. So the minor characters are a little bit like, thought not too far ahead. But as for all the main characters, yeah, I think it's very important to think of like their endings and their beginnings right off the bat, so I know what their purpose is in the game, and sort of what they bring to it. So
Hmm.
why they're
Okay.
there. Like, there's no reason to add a character if there's really no reason to add one at all. Like, if they're pointless, then there's no point to adding them. I guess I'm going
Right.
around in circles here, but yeah, I'm
Right.
sure you understand what I mean. So
Oh yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah. We talked about it a little bit, but does like player or influencer speculation ever factor into your storytelling?
I guess it. Yeah, I guess it does. I think the reason why that does is because. Sorry, could you repeat the question? I just blanked out for a moment. Just trying to think.
I was asking, when you're writing your story, do you ever take a look at some of the crazy theories that are in the community
Yeah,
or
yeah,
influencers are writing? You're
yeah.
like, that's it. That's what I want to write.
Yeah, I definitely do that. I try to avoid doing that though, because the reason why I try to avoid it is because, while I might not take into consideration that, some of their theories might be right, I might subconsciously steal their ideas and then
Mm,
write it into my story. And I think that really kind of takes away from the mystery of speculation and sort of like you know figuring things out on their own. It's not exactly fun to always be right. uh
right.
so yeah, I try to avoid getting or listening to theories too much, because I'm not too big a fan of stealing ideas from the community, but also I want to tell my own story, right? I know it sounds
Right.
kind of selfish, but like, it's my vision, and I want to make sure I keep that and not accidentally steal something that X YouTuber said and put in my story.
Right. Right.
I want to try and be as original and as true to myself as possible. So.
Okay. So you had mentioned this a few times, and I really wanted to dive into it a bit deeper, but the ending of book 1, chapter 12. Could you give us a little bit of background about what that chapter was about?
Yeah, so the ending to book 1, chapter 12, I guess the background to it is it's the ending to book 1. You meet up with Mr. P, the character responsible or allegedly responsible for the entire infection, only to realize that he's filled with regret. So he's
Mhm.
not too happy about what he's done, and he has many regrets. He doesn't see you as a real person like the character, but rather a ghost of the past that continues to haunt him for his errors. So he's become a little crazy and delusional as a result of what he's done.
Yeah. So how did the gameplay in that final chapter actually assist in telling the story?
So the gameplay ties in the sense that Mr. P, who's the main villain, will be chasing you around the map because once again he thinks you're a ghost. He thinks you're not real. You're just a figment of his imagination, and he's trying to get rid of you. And you're going to be physically diving through memories of the past to hopefully find a memory of his own. And eventually you'll find a photo of his wife and hand it to him to sort of bring him back to a time before the infection, before any of his regrets started, happening, and before he made any of those mistakes. And he eventually comes to terms with what's happened, and he accepts what's happened, and he accepts what he's done. So I guess that's how the gameplay kind of plays into that or factors in the story.
Okay. Was there any treatment in the level design to also like assist in the story you were telling?
Yeah, so the map is kind of centered around choosing paths and making decisions. And eventually you're brought into a world that is your own mind filled with distortion and ghosts of old friends, because you too are becoming just as crazy as him in a way. But you're going to be like kind of fighting through that and going through sort of like portals that bring you to the past and bring you through your own memories to sort of find a memory of his. And I guess the level design reflects that, because it's kind of intertwined and brings you to previous maps. So
Mm. Mm. Were there any unique challenges for this specific chapter? I guess you already mentioned it before in writing, but like what were some of the challenges in writing the ending to book 1?
yeah, I guess some of them are ensuring it made enough sense for players to come up with their own theories and ideas as to what's going on and what the purpose of it was, but also just making sense in general, so people could understand why he did this or who he is and what's become of him, why is he acting like this, and kind of what's happening overall. So.
Okay. How did the community receive this chapter? Was it thumbs up, thumbs down? What were the general reactions?
Well, judging by the numbers and the stats, I would say fantastic. I definitely I remember watching a bunch of reactions to the ending, and some people were actually getting emotional, and I did not expect that. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. I love bringing out emotions in people. But it was a brilliant experience nonetheless, and a time I'll definitely never forget. So.
It's awesome. Do you think part of that is like what we were talking about before, because like they were a part of this experience and now they're seeing it like come to an ending that sort of elicited those motions for
Oh
them?
yeah. Oh yeah. I think being on this journey and having it finally see it end is something emotional, not just for them, but for me as well.
Right.
So.
So you finished book 1 and you sit
Mhm.
down and you take the time to reflect. What were some of your learnings from working on both this ending and just generally book 1 that you would apply to like some of the things you're doing now with book 2?
So I think something that I've learned is perspectives are really important, and I want to take that a step further in book 2. Because in book 1 you're spending the whole kind of adventure chasing down someone who you think is a vile villain who's done all this on purpose, but then you actually reach him, and he's just regretful. He knows what he's done, and he's not happy about it. And how I'm kind of using that in book 2 is sort of the same sort of thing, yeah, where the villain is not exactly as bad as you think. You know, the villain in this case, in book 2, Willow, is sort of like Robin Hood. You know, she steals from the rich and gives to the poor, and it's up for debate as to whether or not she's a villain. You know, it's all about perspectives and what you think. So
Right. Okay. So you've obviously found like a lot of success in your story game. I mean, to say
well,
the
thank you.
least. And I see a lot of story games on Roblox, but not necessarily uh, ones that find the level of success that you have. Why do you think that is, or what are some of the challenges of writing story games for Roblox?
So I think some of the challenges that people face are ensuring that or sorry, ensuring that it has good retention, you know, making sure that people
Mm,
can go back and play it.
mm,
Because there are tons of wonderful, just beautiful story games on Roblox that don't get a lot of attention. And
right.
the reason why that is because there's no reason to go back and play it, you know. Maybe there's multiple endings, so maybe you go in, play it, get the endings, but after that, there's really no reason to go back and play it, right? Unless to
Hmm.
like maybe show it to someone else or something like that. So
Hmm.
yeah, retention is definitely the biggest challenge, I would say, for developers to make a story game on Roblox.
I see. So in order to have the longevity that, Piggy has enjoyed, you can't just deliver a linear experience. It needs to be varied by the gameplay as well, in addition to like telling the
Hmm.
story, right?
Yeah, and for example, in Piggy, what I've done is you know I've created build mode, which is something that people can use to make their own stories in Piggy and make their own levels. I've
Hmm.
also introduced abilities so they can like look around the map and unlock them, and use them for future updates and chapters, or
Hmm.
just to get an upper hand in games, and so adding little things like that I think go a long way.
Right. So
Like
like
I
the
wouldn't say
variance,
little, but
yeah. So like the variance in a way, like players are telling a new story every single time they're playing because it's always something different with, the 5 to 6 different players that are on the map.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I wanted to shift gears here a little bit, and we touched upon level design a little bit earlier, but I sort of wanted to dive into the topic here. In your opinion, why should developers pay attention to and really care about the design of their levels?
Well, I'm sure any level designer will tell you this. It tells a story of its own. You know, if you want to like capture, let's say, a tragic event in a house or something, you're not gonna have like sunshine and rainbows plastered all over the walls unless you're going for something very specific. Like you would have like maybe chairs tipped over or a glass broken. It tells a story just by looking at it.
Hmm.
And it gives a game character and builds a world.
Hmm.
Like it definitely adds, like the details tell a story of their own, as I've said before, and it really immerses you even more. If your
Hmm.
level design is just a white box and you're going for like a very spooky horror game, it's definitely going to be a very unique horror game. But I don't think it'll be as scary as, let's say, an abandoned hospital or something that really has a story tied into it. Like something's not right.
Right. Yeah. And to your points earlier, right, it assists you in telling the story. It adds
Hmm.
variability to each time that you play. And, very good point for you. It adds to the immersion. So players actually feel like they're a part of that horror story, right? When you're
Exactly,
giving it
exactly.
attention to detail. Cool. For you, like, how do you design your levels? Like, what's your approach? Where do you start? What are some of the things you consider?
So some things that I consider are often like the atmosphere, the mood and tone. Like I said before with my last point, I like to add sort of little things to make it feel that something's off, be it
Hmm.
through maybe, let's say, eyes that are watching you through the map, or tipped over chairs and tables, or self-made, like just barricades. Like I like to create a sense of loneliness in a lot of chapters as well, and
Hmm.
abandonment.
Hmm.
That's kind of the mood that's going, or the atmosphere and tone in Piggy, is feeling kind of alone in it. um with the most recent chapter, I would say chapter 8, which is a boat. Spoiler alert for for anyone who hasn't caught up. Uh, what I did there is I used like this blue kind of skybox or this greenish bluish one, and it really makes you feel isolated from the rest of the world because you're alone on this foggy ship, and you don't see any signs of life anywhere around you besides on the ship itself. And I think that really helps. So
Awesome. Can we talk about like your level design and level building process, like from start to finish? Like, what are the general steps that you follow for creating your levels for your chapters?
So I'd like to say what I do is very unique. My first thing, like the first thing I do is plan the basic layout and gameplay on MS Paint. Like I'll go on MS Paint and then quickly just put together something 2D, and they don't look very flattering, but it gets the job done. And that's kind of what I do. Like I brainstorm on there and I put my ideas together there. And then what I do is I build the plan in 3D using basic parts in Studio. So I'll just use like gray blocks to kind of map it out, like give a very, very basic geometry sort of layout of the map, so that if I want to change something, I can do it in that phase and do it really easily and quickly, as opposed to like building it all out and then realizing, oh shoot, that should be there or this should be smaller, So yeah, after
you don't create any art until you actually like box it out and sort of play it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like kind of like a gray box world, nothing too beautiful. And then once I'm happy with like the layout, that's when I kind of finish it out and flesh it out and like detail it and then create the art.
Okay. I will say, like with level designers I worked with in the past, I have seen them like run into a conference room and just whiteboard their levels and, get lost in their brains on that stuff. So I don't think you're alone on that. I think a lot of people that think like you with their level design.
That's good.
Draw
That's
it out
good.
first. Yeah. What are some like useful techniques and strategies that you use for designing your levels? Do you have any like good tips for our developers?
Yeah, if you're trying to make sure that players learn the map really fast, something that you can do is make each room look different, be it through a different color scheme or just look entirely, because repetition, I find, causes confusion and gets people lost really easily. If you're walking, let's say in a room, in a corridor, and suddenly you enter a room that was red into a room that's blue, you're going to recognize that little color change and you're going to notice kind of what are the rooms connected to this blue room and what are connected to the red room. Whereas if they were both red, then you'd be pretty confused because there's more to think about and more to learn, I guess, because there's barely any variation, and it'll confuse the player into thinking that this last red room was actually this red room. So if you're going for a maze, oh, sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to ask, like, so the difference in the visibility of the room helps them sort of navigate and not get lost.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you're going for a maze look, then make things look as similar as possible, I guess. But if not, then I highly recommend making the room look slightly different, even if it's just props or something like that. It really goes a long way. So
awesome. So you've built your level, or at least you've boxed it out. What are some strategies or techniques that you use for testing and iterating on the levels? Like, what have you found to be effective?
So what I like to do is I build each event, or I script each event individually, and then I kind of test them individually as well. And then what I do is I kind of do a few playthroughs all the way through. And then what I like to do after, if that works, I bring in some of my developer friends to help me test. And what I tell them is try to break it, do what you can to break the map as soon as possible, or try to escape it, using glitches or whatever. And after that, I patch any out of balance glitches and try to fix it all up from there. And then what I do after that is I do a little cheating playthroughs where I give myself each item and then just speed run it. Sometimes I'll even delete Piggy if I'm feeling really unconfident in my ability to even cheat. So And yeah, how I implement those is I just kind of like add them with each chapter. Each chapter is a new level, so that's what I do.
Okay. So I guess all of your levels go out perfect, right? You never make changes
Oh,
once they're live.
yeah, about that. I would love to say that, but
Yeah.
no, I make changes all the time.
Mm,
Most of them are just patching glitches.
right.
If they do somehow find some way to escape the map or something like that, then I'll do that. Or if there's like a very, very difficult spot to get to or to get out of, then I'll balance that out a little. So
Mhm.
I always will make changes to levels post launch. Unfortunately, no maps are created perfect in my world. I would
Yeah.
hope like, but then again, it's kind of a good thing
Yeah.
because it teaches me what to do and what not to do. I learned from my mistakes. So
Yeah.
mistakes are important.
Right. So for me, I see a lot of developers who are like fearful of making changes to stuff once they push it live for like retribution from the community.
Hmm.
Um, what's sort of like your advice there or your perspective? Like you've obviously made a lot of changes before and you've now seen community reactions to changes that you make. Like what sort of thoughts do you have for developers out there?
Well, usually like some things I like to do polls. That really helps in getting the general idea of
Hmm.
what people want and what people don't want. And no
Hmm.
matter what you do, there's always people that are going to be opposed to change. It doesn't matter if it's in game development and changing something, or if it's in the real world, maybe changing the color of your room. Like
Hmm.
there's always people that aren't going to agree with your decisions, and that's okay. Do
Right.
what you want to do, or sometimes get public opinion, but at the end of the day, it's your game and you are free to make whatever decisions you want to with it. And yeah, there's going to be people that are vocally against it, but
Hmm.
I wouldn't listen to them because you're the game developer here. You know more about game design than they do. So
Right.
you know what, just do what you want, do what you think is best. So
Yeah. That's awesome. So for Piggy, like how have you grown as a level designer? Like what things have you learned that you wish you knew in like previous development projects as an example?
some things that I've learned are a few building techniques, such as like combining like default Roblox textures. I don't often use uh, like my own custom textures. I like to use the Roblox ones just because it's simple and it's easier to use, I find. And also another building technique that I like to use is kind of making illusions of larger maps. So what I do is if I'm trying to make like a city, what I'll do is have like a bunch of city buildings out of bounds, but you can clearly see them so that it looks like you're in this massive city, as opposed to just being in this little area that you're confined in.
Okay. So I wanted to dive into one more example from a chapter. And I thought maybe a good one would be the first chapter, or yeah, the first chapter of book 2. Could you tell us a little bit about the story and the background of that chapter that you created first?
Yeah, sure thing. So, the story, I guess, of book 2, chapter 1 is you're essentially entering an alleyway to find a criminal. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to sort of immerse the player in a city prior to the infection, prior
Hmm.
to when things were wrong. So, some things that I did is I made cars drive by in daylight, realizing that nothing's wrong, and the map took place in daytime, a stark
Hmm.
contrast to most maps which take place during the night.
Hmm.
So that's sort of some things that I did to make sure that people felt like this was before the infection, or at least kind of before things went wrong. So
Okay. And what was like your process for creating the actual level for that chapter? Like, yeah, obviously you sat down, you wrote the story first, and then what?
what I did is I would write, or for chapter 1, what I did is I wrote up the story for the first few chapters and plan out like the map to reflect the story and bring it to life. And
Hmm.
what I did, obviously, is I planned the beginning, the end, and then kind of just fill in the blanks, just as I said a few times before. So that was kind of the process. And, like I said, I also planned a few chapters ahead, so I would know where I'm slightly going with it, because that kind of was the ending of chapter 1, what happens after. So.
Right. Were there any like unique level design challenges that you faced when you were building out the level for chapter 1?
Yeah, so what I wanted to do is, like I said before, make it feel like a city that wasn't fully abandoned, but some things were not quite right about it. So what I would do is, add more liveliness, add cars driving by, but also have some little Easter eggs around, like some binoculars watching you, like make you realize that something's not fully right in this kind of world, and try to piece that together and bring a sense of like uneasiness. And it was a challenge because I had to think of ways that it would balance both, make sure it didn't feel too uneasy and make sure it didn't feel too abandoned. So
it was like really critical for the story of chapter 1 that you really nailed the design of this level to make it look and feel atmospherically the way that you wanted to, right?
Yeah. I hope I nailed it, but
Let's check the angry Twitter post after this.
Yeah.
Did you learn anything from working on this chapter? Like, and if you did, how did you apply those learnings to future chapters?
Yeah, I learned how to incorporate even more story into the level designs of a map. And I applied it into future chapters, such as book 2, chapter 4, the safe place, where characters have their personal objects in the room that give hints as to who they were before the infection, kind of how I said it before, and who they are now. Like there's these little secrets that are visible in broad daylight that give away more of the story, and more detail on to both the environment that they're in and the characters that they're with. So.
So you feel like you've evolved over time as a level designer, even though it gives you headaches at times.
Yeah. I would like to think so.
So that's a best kept secret for devs too. Even though you have so many levels under your belt now, it's still sometimes a headache for you. So they're not unique in that challenge. Yeah. All right. I wanted to shift gears one more time. Speaking of angry Twitter followers and the like, but jokes aside,
my specialty.
I watch you,
no, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Jokes aside, I watch you, from the sidelines here, and you seem to be very engaged with your community. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I like to discuss Piggy and updates, and a lot more of just supporters, as many as I can. Because I like to bring a sense of community, and I believe that they deserve my attention because, they're the ones who gave me their attention and helped Piggy grow into what it is today. Without them, without each and every single one of them, it wouldn't be where it is. So, it's only fair that I make them feel that way, and I make them feel that I'm genuinely grateful, because I am. I'm really happy that what they did, I'm happy for what they've done for me. So it's kind of like a positive feedback loop, like right. they give me their support and I'm going to give them my support back. So
yeah, let's pretend it's like an alternate universe where you didn't engage with your community. What do you feel like you've missed out on? Like what, both for the success of the game and even for you as a developer?
Happiness. No, I'm kidding. that's half true. I'm happy, but it gave me even more joy to interact with so many people who are passionate or as passionate about my project as I was, right. And it helped me meet a lot of people. It helped me feel a lot more comfort in my day-to-day life, knowing that there's those people out there who will support me no matter what. And, it's definitely a lot of fun to talk to people who have common interests. So.
Right. What platforms and tools do you use to engage with the community?
So one of them is Twitter, as we've discussed, for update news and just checking out the incredible art made by supporters, as well as, occasionally looking at theories. I try not to look at them too much, once again, because I don't want to steal any ideas, subconscious or some. Sorry, just steal them casually. I don't want to do that. So I try to avoid that. Yep. But yeah, just checking out the art and the custom characters that people have made, and just stuff that the community has generated. And I also like to use Discord for Piggy players and to gather a community and communicate with each other easily. You know, it gives them a spot to go to if they want to talk about Piggy, and it kind of gives them an environment for them to connect with other people on the same topic. So yeah.
Yeah, you were actually showing me like a stuffed animal version of your avatar earlier.
Yeah, I can go get it if
you
you know, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it.
All right. We'll wait. Everybody needs to know and see.
So someone actually sent me this, a plush of myself, and I think this is the coolest thing. The hat comes off, the eye patch, but yeah, no, but it is crazy how people are this dedicated. It makes me so happy. You know, I wish I could do the same thing for them. So that's that.
There you go. For all of you devs at home, if you engage with your community, they're going to give you cool stuffed animal avatar versions of yourself.
Exactly.
Sorry. All right. More seriously, what approach have you found that works best for engaging with the community?
So what I like to do is I kind of try to avoid as much drama as possible, and stay clear of controversies and arguments, but interact with anything positive from, you know, both my own and other communities. And the reason why I try to stay free or clear of controversy is because this is just me personally. You know, some people like to defend what they believe in, and that's okay. But the reason why I try to avoid it is because I like to create a safe place, you know, for people who are feeling down, that they can come here and feel great. You know, I don't want them to have a bad day and then show up to me discussing kind of something bad that happened in the community, or discussing something, you know, awful that just happened. You know, I like to sort of get people to forget about what's going on, or just stop worrying about their troubles and just feel better about themselves. And yeah, I guess interacting with other communities also helps in a positive light. I want to stress that importance right there. Because it really helps to bridge connections and bring people closer together, and will definitely help you down the line if you need some advice from some people in different communities, as opposed to just kind of like isolating yourself from everyone else.
So block out all of the negative and toxic stuff, celebrate the positive, and be a part of the positivity.
That's my thing. You know, obviously that won't work for everyone. So you do you, but this is just how I do it.
So what about like negative feedback? Let's say you ship a chapter and it doesn't really land the way that you want it to, or the community's not the biggest fan of it. Like, what is your approach to that negative feedback for like the actual gameplay of your game?
So negative feedback can be really hard to take in and receive for so many people, you know, myself included. But because like if someone says like, you know, a negative comment, obviously it's hard to ignore. You know, I've seen this message or this little quote somewhere. I'm gonna paraphrase it. It's like one negative message can hurt or can impact you way more than like 100 good ones. And as much as I would rather that not be the case, it's true, you know, and it does occasionally get to you. But what I try to do is I try to hear them out and get suggestions out of them so I can understand that, like, where they're coming from, because, you know, sometimes they can be really helpful. And it's kind of what Piggy's about, you know, understanding perspectives. So I like to use the lessons I've learned in Piggy into how I receive feedback. So
So for the constructive negative feedback, or just feedback in general, what's your approach into like incorporating it into your game whenever you're like making changes or you're doing, you know, new updates for the game?
So I have like a suggestions channel and bug fixes channel in the Discord server, which I look at regularly to see what incredible ideas and suggestions the community has, as well as the various issues I have to fix. So what I do is obviously I'll get to fixing any bugs, but suggestions, if I really like them, and people can actually upvote them too. If it's really popular and I like them, then sometimes maybe I'll throw it in, or maybe I'll throw in something similar to it. So.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. It's like free QA, right? Like if they're going to find all these bugs or suggestions for you, like why not make your
use
game
that?
better? Yeah.
Take that to your advantage. So.
Right. Awesome. Are there any major learnings that you've had during the development of Piggy and engaging in the community?
Oh boy, where do I begin?
How much time we got?
Yeah, exactly. Well, at first, I wasn't really keen on, fan games because like this was my first kind of big breakthrough in the Roblox world. And I wasn't really like, I really wanted to protect that. I was very protective, but I realized like after a while that I was just kind of limiting their creativity and inhibiting them from expressing themselves. Some people, like I said, were as passionate about my project as I was, and to kind of take that away from them was not the best idea on my part. And I've, after a while, I've realized that. So I've decided to kind of just like take a step back and stop being so strict and just let them do whatever they want, make their own characters and make their own fan games and worlds in this Piggy universe, so
Right.
I guess that's the biggest thing I've learned.
Right. So you're kind of like vigilant of straight up copies, but in terms of the community sort of celebrating your story and your work and wanting to expand upon it in their own way, you're now like shifting from defensive to sort of like celebrating that.
Exactly. And
Okay.
I think every developer should take that into account. Obviously, if it's like a direct ripoff, no doubt about it, then yeah, you're free to go after it. I shouldn't say it like that, but like, do something about it. But if it's a fan game, just let them have their fun and let them do what they want. Because, if like the best part about it is it'll also bring attention to your game. People who've never played your game but played theirs is going to bring attention to you. So if anything, it helps. So
it's kind of like free advertising.
Exactly. So
it's awesome. Is there anything that has surprised you about engaging with the community?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I did not expect them to be so supportive and understanding in like almost every situation. So I delay things every now and then. Here
Sometimes,
we go. Yeah, sometimes. But the community is really, really supportive and understanding as to why I do these things. And whenever someone's like, "Oh, you delayed it again," then my community will do their best to try and make sure that person understands why it is what it is, and try to, once again, get different perspectives on the things. And that's why, I think perspectives are important, and it's a very important message in Piggy, because like almost every argument kind of starts from a lack of perspective or lack of understanding of the other side. So
speaking of delays, for all of those out there who are also struggling on the content treadmill, how do you keep up with the community's like never ending demand for new chapters, new content? Is there like an approach for the process there or for developing that new content?
So what I do is I update on a bi-weekly basis to hopefully keep the players and supporters happy. It's usually me doing the grand majority of the work on Piggy. Occasionally I'll have IKEAs help me build. So I like to take my time with updates. When I first started, it was weekly, and while it was great for the community and being a supporter at the time for getting a weekly chapter, it wasn't so good on my health because I was just on that nonstop. So doubling my work time has definitely been such a great help.
Right.
And I like to take my time with my updates. Every second update is also a minor update, adding some like minor features or items or abilities. And then after that, it would be a big chapter update. So on top of having double the time to work, I also don't have to work so hard on future updates and bringing something new. So
yeah, I've sort of found the same things. Like work-life balance is just really important, and if you're exhausted and you're not passionate about the work, you're not creating the best work possible. So it's important to find like a schedule that's right for you, right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, last shifting gears, and then I want to wrap it up before we go to Q&A. But part of your community is also a voracious and passionate influencer community, right? YouTubers who are creating this content, speculating on your story, everything else. Could you talk about that a little bit and maybe like what that's done to impact your community and maybe some of the success of Piggy?
Yeah, well, I definitely think they brought a lot of attention to the game. I say I definitely think, but it's almost certain that they did.
Yeah, yeah.
If it weren't for them, obviously Piggy once again wouldn't be where it is today. So they're great supporters of me, even if they
Hmm.
don't think so. If they're still making content on the game, then they're supporting me, and so it's only fair if I support them back. And to have nice discussions with them and pop in for occasional interviews and
Hmm.
that sort of
Hmm.
thing. So uh because Piggy plagued Roblox and like on YouTube in like 2020, I think it's safe to say that they've helped me quite a bit. So yeah.
Do you engage with them at all, or is it kind of like they reach out to you and you decide to sort of speak with them?
So it's a bit of both, like in terms of engagement. Like, I'll
Mm.
reply to their tweets and every now and then and have nice discussions with them, be it on the topic of Piggy or not.
Mm.
Um, but when it comes to like collaborations or something, I'm not the best with that.
Right.
I'm not good at replying to DMs in the first place, so that's the first issue.
Yeah.
But the second is I usually don't reach out to them because I'm
Hmm.
probably busy doing something else. So
Mm.
it's usually them reaching out to me, which
Hmm.
is not a bad thing. It's great to have nice conversations with them
Hmm.
or work with them on something, maybe like a video or something. But
Okay.
yeah, unfortunately, there's not much like direct collaboration, I would say, between
Yeah.
me and influencers. It's just kind of
More,
like
more
being there
just
for each other.
yeah, more just stoking, the community flames on stories and conspiracy theories and everything else about what's
All
going
those
on in the Piggy
Roblox
universe.
conspiracies.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Cool. All right. Well, I wanted to wrap up here. I had a few more questions for you before we go to Q&A, but maybe just to wrap up with this, what are a few tips you can give like new and young developers who are wanting to create story-driven games?
Never, ever, ever shy away from expressing yourself and your own mind and ideas and thoughts. I see a lot of developers on Roblox that they're too worried that what they make might be, too scary or something like that, But
Hmm.
don't shy away from expressing yourself. Go all out. As long as it follows the Roblox rules, make sure that happens. But always plan also. Like always have a plan thoroughly before committing to something. Because if you kind of just make stuff up as you go along, it like I said, it becomes hard to wrap up and tie together at the end. So have a beginning planned, then an ending planned. Very, very important that you do so. The middle, that's kind of, you do what you want. I would recommend a plan, but I'm sure you could probably pull it off if you did it as you go along. Just
Hmm.
plan lots. Very, very important because it makes life so much easier.
Hmm.
And also, I guess something else is write a story that really means something to you. If you're writing about like some guy going to eat a banana, then if that's a passion to you, go for it. But if you could care less, then I wouldn't recommend going for it. Write something that means something to you and holds a special place in your own heart. So
It's awesome.
I guess that's another thing. And the last tip is make it cohesive. Like when you're thinking of a story or you're writing it out, it may make sense to you because you've been thinking about it for all this time, but it probably won't be to others. So something you could do is probably like give it to a friend or family member and get them to try and understand what's going on, or or just play it by ear. But make sure it makes sense. I guess that's the biggest thing.
Okay. Looking back at your early days as a developer, what was like one thing you wish that you knew?
uh I wish I took it easy and spread positivity, because this is a little embarrassing, but in like 2017ish, when one of my games got to like 200 concurrent players, I think, it was my first time handling a community, So I
Mhm.
wasn't sure how to handle power. It's funny thinking about it now,
Mm,
because once again, it was only like 200 players, but but
right.
I would anyone who like had some criticism, I'd just ban them. I'd be like, bye, have fun, have a great day. Even if it was like constructive and I didn't agree with them,
Yeah.
I'm like, bye, have a great day, see ya. Never. But
So
but
so
yeah,
you've relaxed a little bit over
yeah,
time
I
then
would
as
say
well.
I relaxed a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was pretty bad when I first started, but like I said, it was my first experience with
Mm,
that sort of thing, so I wasn't exactly sure how to handle it properly. And it's a good thing that I did that, now that I think about it, because if I didn't, then I wouldn't have learned from it. And who
mm.
knows, to this day, like probably today, I could be doing the same thing right now, just banning people.
You'd be banning like 60,000 people a day.
Exactly. I'd ban
Yeah,
my entire player base day
that's
one.
right. Well, what about those on the opposite side of the fence? So those that are apprehensive about engaging with the community. Do you have any advice that you could give them?
Well, if you have nothing to hide, then you really have like nothing to lose. As long as
Mm,
you communicate with constructive people as well and build your community around positivity, then your community is going to really make you happy. Because if you build your community on a negative note and
mm,
around canceling other people or something, then I feel like whenever you open Twitter or whenever you open Discord, you're just gonna be met with drama as opposed to people hyping each other up. It's kind of like when you build a community, it's very important that you emphasize what you want out of it, what you want to see, and what emotions you want to get out of it. So,
right. Okay. All right. Last question, and then we're going to Q&A, and then you're free, MiniToon.
alrighty.
Do you have any other thoughts you would like to share?
I guess you know what? It's been a great interview. It's been a great roundtable. I've had a lot
Yeah,
of fun. Thank you all for coming. I just wanted to say it was a lot of fun. Thank you for asking me the questions, and I've had a great time.
absolutely.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm always just so happy that I'm here and so grateful for every single person that supported me and helped me out, even if it's just playing my game for a minute. You still helped me out, and it means the world to me. So thank you so much.
All right. And thank you, MiniToon. We're super excited that you joined us today, and
Thank you.
hopefully the devs learned a lot from you. And with that, I'll toss it back to Aaron for Q&A.
Hey, that was a great conversation, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for diving into the experience of creating such an iconic and successful Roblox game and sharing all these valuable insights with us. So we will be moving to Q&A now. As a reminder, I will be reading your questions aloud if you submitted them anonymously. Otherwise, I will call on you to read your question. So be prepared for that. It might take us a couple seconds to unmute you as well, so bear with us. Okay, our first question is from an anonymous. How important is lore in terms of retention and driving a player base?
In terms of retention, I don't necessarily think it has too much of an effect. It depends on how you implement the lore, of course. But driving the player base, it's a huge thing, because like I said, Piggy on YouTube was massive in 2020 because of all these theories popping up and everyone coming up with their own sort of stories and their own thoughts on what's going on and their own theories. So I think it's very, very important for driving a player base, to have some sort of lore and having some sort of like sub lore, like some hidden stuff going on and uh, some stuff behind the scenes that but maybe they necessarily don't know. So I think it's a very big thing. And back on the note of retention, I think it depends on how you sort of like implement the lore, as I've said. Like if it's something that you have to go back and play to like figure out, like maybe if it's multiple endings, then yeah, that's going to help retention. Um, if it's something like finding notes, maybe that's going to help retention as well, because people are going to have to go back in and look for it. So it really depends on how you implement it. If it's just a linear storyline, then it probably won't do much, besides theories. But if you add more to it, then yeah, I think it will.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Chipio Industries.
All right. When programming, what kind of planning do you do to prevent the code base from becoming tangled as it expands? And can you describe your thought process?
Well, what I used to do was terrible. I would write it as I went along. But what I would do now is sort of make it modular. Like, as I've said before, planning is very, very important. And the more plans you have, or the more in-depth your planning is, the easier it's going to be to organize your work into making sure that it'll work for future updates and stuff like that. Like, for example, if I'm doing, let's just use Piggy as an example. If I'm trying to make like a story-based, chapter-based kind of game, then I would plan out as much as I could as possible, like make sure it works for as many chapters or whatnot, and then sort of organize it in a way that it's really easy and as streamlined as possible to add more content to it, like add a different chapter to it. And I guess, yeah, the most important thing when it comes to making sure it doesn't become too tangled is making sure that it's as planned as possible at the beginning, so you know exactly where to take it and where to go with it. So
Mhm.
I hope that answers it.
I believe so. I don't
Awesome.
suppose you use any frameworks or anything, just your own, right?
Nope. Unfortunately not, no. I should probably get into it. So we'll see.
All right. Our next question is from Lior.
So I was curious about how your success with Piggy and the amazing community behind it affects you as a person and your developing career.
So that's a good question. It definitely affects me in a positive way, for sure. It makes me, feel better about waking up every morning and, reading all these messages and lovely, supportive, works by, or just, I guess, tweets from all these supporters out there. It definitely makes me feel more productive and more inspired / motivated to continue working on it because of the positive hyping that's going on, because of how supportive they are and how understanding they are and how happy they are to just interact with me and me to interact with them. So it's yeah, I guess it just makes you feel great to have such a positive community. And as for the success has definitely, it's been both ways. It's been bad because of the toll it's taken on my health when I was starting out and updating it constantly. But afterwards, it's been great because of all the perks that come with it. You get to meet wonderful people. You get to interact with people who are just as passionate about the same things as you are. And it's yeah, as long as you're willing to be responsible enough to handle the success, then I think you're going to have a great time with it. So
All right. Our next question is anonymous. What does your team look like and how do you go about finding good talent?
well, this is what I look like, in case you're curious. No, I'm kidding. My team is pretty small. I'm not too much of a sort of team worker when it comes to making Roblox games, because there's some things that I'm like, I have a very specific vision for and I'd like to achieve in my own way. And it's sometimes a good thing, sometimes not so good, because you can't work as fast as you could with a team. So my team is relatively small. It's just me as the main scripter / builder, Ikea's who helps build some maps occasionally, and Optic who does the build mode, as well as B-Slick who does the music, and then occasional helpers when I need something specific, like maybe a specific model or a specific character. So it's relatively small. And how I would go about finding a team is engaging yourself in communities that you would want to like work in, or sorry, like engaging yourself in genres, like communities of genres of games that you'd like to work on. Like, for example, if you want to make a racing game and you're trying to find people to help with that, maybe finding communities of other racing medias or games or something like that could definitely help you find people that are both interested in the same things that you are, so they won't lose motivation of working on the project as fast as you'd hope, or sorry, as too fast. But also, just have someone who you can trust, or at least work together with, that you understand, like you kind of share a same vision or a similar vision if you're interested in the same things. I'm sorry if that didn't make any sense. I'm really making this stuff on the spot, but also a lot of it comes from personal experience too. Like how I met IKEA's and Optic was working on previous horror round-based games in the past, So we still know each other like 4 years later, working on the same sort of things to this day. And we met in that same like horror video game genre. So that's definitely how you can meet some people and hopefully gather a team from that. I don't have too much experience with this because it kind of just happened naturally for me. So sorry if I just completely butchered the question, but hopefully that answers it.
Great, thank you. That's good advice. So the next question is, do you have any advice on monetization strategies where a younger audience is the primary focus group?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I don't have too much experience with monetization because I don't really develop mostly for the money. It's mostly for the experience because that's how I kind of started. But I guess the if you want to monetize for a younger audience, I would probably recommend making sure one that it's not pay to win, because I don't think audiences would like that. I guess that's more geared towards older audiences. But I think that's something very, very important to keep in mind because that'll obviously it'll drive people to want to buy things if it's pay to win. But I think it'll drive away people from playing because let's say you're a younger player and you join a game for the very first time and you keep getting absolutely wrecked by this person who's just loaded on Robux. I don't think that's going to be a very fun experience. I think sometimes cosmetics is probably the best way to go with monetization because let's take that same scenario and remove the pay to win, but instead with cosmetics. You're a younger player, you join and you see this other player decked out with like the coolest house or the most awesome pets. You're gonna want that. So I think that would be the best way, in my opinion. Like I said, I don't have too much experience with this, but I think that's kind of how I would go about doing it. So making sure it doesn't affect gameplay too much or in a way that gives you a substantial advantage over other players.
Makes sense. Our next question is from Daish.
Hi. Okay. Yeah. So my question was, is it sustainable to develop a single game, or would you recommend diversifying to like increase the amount of income sources you have by creating multiple games?
It's hard to tell because, as you probably know, I've only made like one game besides Intercity, but it's still a demo. So it's not exactly a full game. I think for you personally as a developer, I think it's good to make multiple games because eventually you're going to experience burnout on the current one that you're working on, and you're going to want to work on more things. Like you can't work on the same thing for the rest of your life because it becomes very redundant and repetitive unless you're always, changing the way you work on it. But I think for you as a developer, I think it's good to occasionally switch projects and work on something different because it gives you like a refreshing break from the usual game that you're working on. And also, it like you said, diversifies your kind of game library, I guess, and your projects. Plus, you'll learn some new things that you wouldn't have learned if you were working on your previous game. So
Yeah,
I would
good
say go
advice.
for it.
Good advice. Thanks.
No problem. Thank you for the question.
All right, thanks for that. Our next question is from 89.5.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Ahoy.
Since Piggy started out as just an AI test, I wanted to know if you consider it to be better to develop a full game before releasing, or if you consider it to be better to build multiple demos of different ideas and then seeing what sticks.
That one's actually a pretty good question. I think probably the demos is a lot less work intensive than making a whole game, because if you make a full game and then release it, then that's that. And you spent all that time working on that massive game, and who knows if it sticks, right? So I think probably doing the demo option is better, because then you'll be able to see what people like and what people don't like. There's much less risk involved with making multiple demos. And on top of that, if it's just kind of a demo, then you have lots of updates and lots of content that can potentially be added, as opposed to if you release a full thing, you won't have as many updates as you would with a demo. So
I see. Thank you.
no problem. You're welcome.
Hey, up next we have Thunder1222.
So when you add on to your story, how do you expand on it? Do you add like foreshadowing and then just stop it and then expand upon the foreshadowing in the next update? Or is the story just like ongoing the entire time until you stop it?
It's a little bit of both. The way I introduce kind of more story is sometimes I like to introduce more characters and then give them backstories that people can learn throughout, be it exploration or just meeting the character, as well as, giving more information on previous characters as well. I think characters are a very, very important part when it comes to story building and storytelling, because you're able to not only just tell just basically explain what's going to happen or foreshadow. You don't just have to foreshadow. You can also backtrack and kind of give info on what's happened before, and more information on the characters. You can kind of go both ways with it. So the way I do it personally is I kind of do a bit of all. I do some foreshadowing occasionally, but I also give information on characters in the past as well. And it is ongoing. Every chapter that comes out, it continues the story, but it also gives more information on everything else. Well, not everything else, but like, the characters and backstories and the world itself. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
Great. Our next question is anonymous. How do you handle community management? Do you have a team? Is there a platform that you prefer?
Oh boy. Well, I'm actually planning on doing a talk about this in the future, because it's a very, very broad question. Like, there's a lot that goes into it, for sure. There's a lot that goes into community management. But how I do it is it's just me, basically, as well as my developers, and we just discuss. We have talks with the supporters, and I guess the platforms I prefer to use are Twitter and Discord. I think those ones are pretty great. Twitter for like update news or just discussing, random things with supporters, and Discord for just hanging out and, just having chill conversations with people who have similar thoughts and ideas, and getting opinions as well. It's a very difficult question for me to answer, because there's so much that goes into it. But if you want to know how I do it, it's just me on Twitter and my developers. We just occasionally do update news and interact and talk about the update news and stuff like that. So
Nice, thank you. Up next we have Daish again.
Hi. Okay, yeah.
Ahoy.
I was wondering, do you use analytics to help design your game, like base your design around analytics? And if so, what kind of data do you collect and how do you work with it?
So when I first started, I didn't really use analytics, and the people in this chat actually have they've asked me to do so, because they're like, it'll help you. And they were right. It definitely helps, because I was just using the default Roblox ones, and it's very hard to gather what people like if you're just using the Roblox analytics, because you can do polls on like Discord and Twitter, but you have to remember that the majority of your players aren't the ones that are on Twitter or aren't the ones on the Discord. They're the ones actively playing the game and just doing that. So having analytics on like very specific levels that people play or items that they buy in the shop really helps keep an eye on what people like and what people want more of, and what you should change and whatnot. So some things I keep track of are, shop items, levels played, levels escaped, to balance out difficulty, and stuff like that. So
Yeah, since joining the PlayFab program, we've had like a huge boost in like abilities when it comes to analytics, and it has greatly helped like improve the design, especially around levels.
oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good to hear from a larger developer.
Yeah, I didn't use analytics, and I regret never using them before. So highly
Yeah.
recommended, guys.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
All right, so we are starting to run out of time. So these will be our last two questions.
Alrighty.
They're both anonymous. How often do you try to release an update, and how do you decide when to release and what to include?
So how often do I release an update? I do it like bi-weekly. Obviously, you don't have to do that. As long as your game has enough retention to support the amount of time between updates, then I think you're good. You know, like if you introduce a lot of stuff or something to grind for that will take like enough time for you to do an update, then I think that's the optimal solution. That's the thing you want to go for. Yeah, I guess that's how I plan out my times. I think bi-weekly is good enough for me, but I also like to sprinkle some smaller things maybe every week or so, be it bug fixes or something like that, like small little secrets that you can find. But yeah, that's kind of how I do it. And what was the second question, sorry? Or the side question, like the part 2?
How do you decide when to release and what to include?
Oh, what to include. That was, yeah, I guess it goes hand in hand with what you introduce to keep people playing, you know? If you introduce something that nobody's gonna really care about, then I guess don't. You want to introduce things that'll keep people engaged and playing and or at least interested in what's going on. So what I do is I do chapters because, you know, that's kind of the main thing of Piggy. It's a storytelling game. But yeah, I guess that's kind of how I do my update flows. What to include is very broad for sure, because it really depends on the specific game you're trying to make. But I guess you could also just try to get inspiration from other games and see what they're doing and kind of brainstorm ideas of your own from those ideas. So
Got it. Thank you. Looks like we have some last minute shuffling happening with the questions.
no
Wait
worries.
for it to settle just for a second. All right. Do you ever feel like you're caught in an endless loop of thought process, whether it be writing your story or programming, and no matter how much you think, it doesn't add up? If so, what are some things you do to get over this hurdle?
Oh man, the amount of times I've spent like 9 hours trying to fix a script because I forgot like I did a typo in one little thing. Oh man. Oh man, it hurts. It hurts. But some of the things that I do when I have like a writer's block or a scripter's block, I guess, is I like to go outside and go for walks, getting fresh air, or just doing something that really gets my mind, you know, cleared. Really helps because I just remove it from my mind and I feel very refreshed when I come back to it. So walks personally really help for me, you know, getting that fresh air and going outside. I know MiniToon goes outside. Who would have thought? But yeah, no, I think doing stuff like that, doing physical activity definitely gets you focused less off of what you're working on and more on sort of your physical health and what you're currently doing. So definitely get your mind off of it for a bit and think about other things and then come back to it and you'll feel very refreshed and ready to fix whatever is going on. So
That is excellent advice. Thank you. So that is it for our Q&A. Thank you all for asking such great questions. And
yeah, thank you
of course,
guys.
yeah. I'd also like to thank, of course, MiniToon and Dan for a fabulous roundtable conversation, as well as Missimo and Dino S'more for their support of this event. And of course, thank you all for joining us.